Can't believe we're already at Tuesday night, Doc. It just seems like you just got here, amen. And but it has been a wonderful time. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us, amen, and really challenging us through the Word of God, amen. Very special time. Appreciate your friendship over the years, amen, and we love you. Come on up and give us a word, amen.
Thank you, preacher, for this privilege. I don't take it for granted. I enjoy telling people around the country about a church, and there's that ice cream truck again. I'm watching you. Somebody thought, he's having one of those senior moments or something like that. And no, I was listening to the ice cream truck. I always look forward to coming and being with you, and I enjoy telling friends around the country. There's a church in Norristown, Pennsylvania, where I've been preaching for, and now I've got to edit the statement and say, we got to figure this out exactly, but almost 25 years. There's only one other church where I've been preaching for that long. It's a church in South Carolina on Johns Island. And so Johns Island, South Carolina, and Norristown, Pennsylvania, there's no other churches where I've been preaching for so many years. And I thank you, preacher. Thank you. And that song that we sang, mangoes, pie, bananas, I've got to come up with an Indian version of that song because India grows more mangoes than anybody else in the world, and we got papayas, and in some places where I go in India, they tell me that there's almost 50 different kinds of bananas. And that may be a slight exaggeration, but not much. I mean, they got little ones, and they got big ones, and they got red ones, and they got so I got to come up with an Indian version. And as far as our dear sister, now I see the ice cream truck. I think he did that on purpose. Just kind of drive right in front of me. I just kind of looked over off that direction through the window, and there was the ice cream truck. Our dear sister greeting us tonight and saying good morning. And every one of us have done that before. We still enjoy it a whole lot more when somebody else does it, but every one of us has done it. And you know why I think we do it? You know why I think we do it? Because we just get ready for that day when the sun comes up in the morning, and all we're going to be able to say is good morning. We'll just say good morning. So we're just getting ready. So I wasn't kidding when I said I like that greeting. But I do thank you again for the joy of being with you. And if you don't have one of our updated prayer cards, I hope you'll get one on the table. Get one from the table, just there in the back or the front, depending on if you're coming or you're going. It's there in the foyer, there on the table. I hope you'll get one of those. I want to invite you to turn with me, please, in the Word of God to the book of 2 Samuel chapter 21. 2 Samuel chapter 21. I told you last night we started preaching in the first of the chapter. Tonight we're going to preach the rest of the chapter. With your Bibles open with you, it's to 2 Samuel chapter 21. If you're able, I invite you to stand with me, please. Standing together, shall we?
I'll beat you last time.
I'll begin reading in verse number 15. Moreover, the Philistines had yet war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him and fought against the Philistines, and David waxed faint. And Ishbi-benob, which was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight, he being girded with a new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, succored him, and smote the Philistine, and killed him. Then the men of David sware unto him, saying, Thou shalt go no more out with us to battle, but thou pleadest not the life of Israel. And it came to pass after this that there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gath. Then Sibbecai the Hushite slew Saph, which was of the sons of the giant. There was again a battle in Gath with the Philistines, where Eliakim, the son of Jeroboam of Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shimei, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants. Amen. Let's go to the Lord in prayer, shall we? Yes. Father, we thank you, Lord, for your goodness to us, for these days that we've shared together around your word, for the fellowship that we've enjoyed, the encouragement that my own heart has received. We ask, Lord, that what you have done among us during this time would far outlast days marked on a calendar. We pray, Lord, that indeed that you would have moved in our midst in such a way that the impact would spread far from this place, could not be confined to this building. That, Lord, will require eternity itself to reveal all that has resulted from these few days. For it is in Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. The Bible says when David stepped in the valley of Elah, he paused at a little brook where he gathered together 5 smooth stones. If I were to ask the significance of those 5 stones, no doubt hands would be quickly raised, especially among our young Sunday school scholars. And I'd be reminded that Goliath, the giant, had 4 brothers. 1 stone killed Goliath. 4 others remained. David picked up 5 stones, a little brook, there in the valley of Elah. That answer is not incorrect, but I don't think it's the whole answer. You see, I still believe that 5, the number 5, speaks of grace in Scripture. And it was only by God's grace that a shepherd boy was able to enter into a valley and face a Goliath. And by the way, yes, there were 4 other brothers in that family, giants. But David didn't kill them all. There were 4 other brothers, but there were 4 other giant slayers. You see, when you experience God's grace in the valley, that grace ought to reach beyond the valley. That grace could not be confined to the valley, nor could it be confined to his life alone. David was not only a giant slayer, David raised up giant slayers. I pray, my friend, we would experience such grace in our lives, perhaps in the valley, that would reach beyond the valley, that would influence others as that grace has touched us. One giant slayer after another steps forward to face the next brother. Goliath had a brother named Ishbi-benob. The name literally means one who dwells in Nob. I remind you that Nob was a city where dwelt priests. The very city where David had gone and took to himself the sword of Goliath and Saul in his brutality. He slew the inhabitants of that city, Nob, where had dwelt priests. Well, this giant's name, Ishbi-benob, means one who dwells in Nob. It seems as though a giant, the brother of Goliath, had taken up his residence in those courts that had once been sacred. May I say to you, dear friend, in our day, there are giants who dare to tread in courts that were once deemed sacred. There was Ishbi-benob. And then after him, there was one named Saph. The name Saph simply means tall. Means tall. Now they were all giants, they were brothers. The five of them, including Goliath, they were all giants, but this one's name means tall. They were all giants, but his name means tall. I don't know how big he was, but all of his other brothers, even though they were giants, dared not call him Shorty. His name means tall. It's as though the next giant steps forward and they just keep getting bigger and bigger. But I notice this. The last two of the brothers aren't even named. Aren't even named. It's as though the giant slayers stepped forth and stifled, denied them their legacy. As if to say, we banished their remembrance. Until at last, they took the battle to the very den of iniquity itself, when at last they're fighting in the streets of Gath, the hometown of Goliath and the rest of his brothers. David steps forward out of the shadows of obscurity. He steps forward from among his little flock of sheep. He steps forward to the surprise of everyone, including his own father. You remember how when Samuel gathered together the father and the sons there in Bethlehem to anoint the next king, that Jesse had not even called for David. David was watching the sheep. The Bible says that Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel. And Samuel said, the next king is not among them. Still, Jesse did not call for David. As I read the story, and as I understand the story, the Bible says that Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel, not once, the Bible says twice. He makes his 7 to pass before Samuel one time, and Samuel said, I don't see, and Jesse said, well, I'm going to make them pass by again, because one of them's got to be the next king. And Samuel said, you've got to have another son. Jesse said, well, I do, but he's watching the sheep. surprised everybody, including his own daddy. Maybe his daddy most of all. One day, when the older sons were there at the battlefront, David shows up on that errand, being sent by his father. Take greetings to his brothers. Eliab, the older sibling, confronts him. He says, with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? As if to say, you're only a shepherd and not much of one of that. Eliab said, I know the naughtiness of your heart. I know why you have come. Eliab was in for a surprise. Goliath gave this challenge, blasphemed the God of heaven. And David stood before Saul, and he said, let no one's heart be distressed because of this giant, because I'm about to silence him.
Amen.
And Saul said, but he's been a warrior from his youth, and you are but a youth. I'm glad that God can still use those who are yet in their youth. You are but a youth. And David stepped forward, and a giant died in a valley called Elah. Do you remember how surprised everyone was? Well, may I say to you that David himself was quite surprised when he saw the next giant slayer step forward. Isn't that an amazing thing, my friend? How we oftentimes find ourselves delightfully surprised when we see that person whom God is so pleased to use.
Yes.
The Bible says that it was when a giant thought to have slain him. That giant was a sarcastic rascal. Because the Bible says that he thought to have slain him with a new sword. Well, do you remember how that David had said of the sword of Goliath, there's no sword like it? Now this giant shows up with a new sword. In my opinion, it just shows him to be a sarcastic rascal. It was when the giant thought to have slain David, when it seemed that David was breathing his last breath, that the next giant slayer stepped on the scene. You know, it might be in that moment when God's people are just about ready to say, the last of the giant slayers are breathing their last breath, that the next giant slayer steps on the scene. It was not until that moment when it seemed as though the great giant slayer was dead that the next giant slayer, and not until that moment that the next giant slayer stepped on the scene. But wonder of all wonders, look who it is. The Bible says, in those moments when David was breathing his last breath, that the next giant slayer steps on the scene, and David perhaps was as surprised as anyone else when he saw Abishai reach forth his hand and save his life. I want you to think first. I want you to think about the stumbling of instability. The stumbling of instability. I think David was as surprised as anybody else. And he was breathing his last, wondering perhaps would there ever be another giant slayer. That the next giant, he stepped forward, and the one who reaches forth his hand is Abishai. I want you to think about the stumbling of instability. You see, Abishai was not a good example of stability. May I remind you of that moment when Saul was encamped near to David and his men in pursuit of David. And David said to Abishai and one other, he said, "Who will go with me into the camp?" And Abishai said, "I'll go." And so David and Abishai went to the camp, and they found Saul sleeping there in the trench, and the people were sleeping round about him. And it was Abishai who said, "This is the moment that God has promised. He's delivered you. He's given Saul into your hand. Let me smite him, and it will not take a second strike." Now, thankfully, David had more discernment in that moment.
Amen.
And he said, "I will not rise to the throne, traveling such a dark path. I will not lay my hand upon God's anointing." The Bible says that even cutting that portion of Saul's garment, even doing that smote his heart. Even that much smote. Abishai was not a good example of stability. Do you remember that time when David was fleeing from Jerusalem because his son Absalom had raised his hand in treachery against his own father? And one named Shimei came forward cursing. And it was Abishai who said, "Let me take off his head." And David said in reply, "It may be that the Lord has bid him to speak to me in such a way. And if that be so, who am I to silence him?"
Right.
It was Abishai who spoke, but David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah?" It was Abishai who spoke, not Joab. Later, David is returning to the kingdom, and Shimei, he comes again, pledging his loyalty. His sincerity, if there were any of any measure, was very shallow. Shimei, he comes there to greet David. And Abishai says again, he should die. It was Abishai who spoke. But David responded to both Abishai and Joab and said, "Are the two of you sons of Zeruiah, you become my enemy?" Now I want to remind you of one other occasion, and this grabs my attention. For the Bible tells us in 2 Samuel chapter 3 and verse number 30. The Bible tells us of that moment when Abner, who had served as Saul's general, came to ask mercy of David. The Bible says that Joab, there in the gate of the city, he called to him out of the shadows. And the Bible very graphically describes how Joab killed Abner. But the Bible says in 2 Samuel chapter 3 and verse number 30, the Bible says that Joab and Abishai killed Abner. The Bible is very graphic in describing Joab killing Abner. But I don't read anything of what Abishai did. Now maybe Abishai stood watch, and he looked this way and that way, make sure that nobody was coming. I don't know. But I do know this. When God says you did it, you did it. The Bible says that Joab and Abishai killed Abner. He was not a good example of stability. Somebody might say, "Preacher, Can God use me? When I look back over the days of my past, I see such instability. I have not been a good example of loyalty and commitment and faith. Who's to say what God might do if you'll just step forward in the battle? Who's to say? It was Peter. Peter who got out the boat, walked on the water, started to sing. Maybe the other disciples said one to another, well, his ministry didn't last long. Of course, we'd be quick to remind them that they didn't even get out of the boat. It was Peter who said, Lord, everybody else might run, but I'll never forsake you. And Jesus said, this very night you will deny me 3 times before the cock crows. He was not the best example of stability. But my friend, listen on the day of Pentecost to the voice that's preaching. Is that Peter? That's Peter! That's Peter! And look at the thousands who responded to Christ. Paul and Barnabas went to mission field. John Mark went with them. John Mark said to them, I'm going home. This isn't for me. I'm going home. But who would have thought that one day Paul would say to John Mark, bring him with you because he's profitable to me for the ministry. Who would have thought that this man named John Mark would be the very one used of God to write that gospel which bears his name, the gospel of Mark. This man who fled from the mission field to be used of God to sound the battle charge for the church. For it was Mark who said, as the Lord spoke through him, go ye to all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Who would have thought that God would use such a man to sound the trumpet? I think about the stumbling of instability. But then I think secondly about the shadows of obscurity. The shadows of obscurity. The scriptures tell us of Abishai stepping forward and the giant who was slain. And next, one named Sibbecai stands forth. Sibbecai's name literally means, you remember how the Bible says of the giant that he had a spear like unto a weaver's beam? Compared the spear to a weaver's beam. Spear held by the giant. Would you believe that the name Sibbecai means a weaver? A weaver. It's as though God said, if you've got giants that carry a spear the size of a weaver's beam, I got just the man for them. Somebody might would say, well, he's a fine weaver, but I don't know if he'd make much of a soldier. It's great, my friend, to enjoy the gift and skill of a weaver. But no one would expect that the greatest of warriors would come forth from that occupation. His name means a weaver. By the way, if you think that is mere coincidence, the Bible says that the father of the next giant slayer, whose name was Elhanan, the Bible says that his name is Jehoiakim. You know what the name Jehoiakim means? Now, Sibbecai means a weaver. You know what the name Jehoiakim means? It means, I kid you not, it means a forest of weavers. A forest of weavers. Down south where I come from, we got this little saying to describe people that just seem to be showing up from nowhere. We say, they just coming out of the woods. We thought we invented that statement. I don't think we did. I found it in my text. His name means a forest of weavers. God said, you got giants that carry spear like into weavers' beams. I got just a man. And by the way, God said, I can call them out of the woods when I want to. Do you know how many great servants of the Most High God who've just been called out of the woods? Called out of the woods. The Lord just brings them forth out of the shadows, and we find ourselves again smitten with surprise. I don't claim to be a great giant slayer, but I still take great delight when people ask me, where are you from? And I tell them, well, my family's from a little town called North, South Carolina. It's not in the northern part of South Carolina, it's in the southern part of South Carolina, but it's called North, South Carolina. By the way, my wife and I, we have the privilege of residing for some small portion of our schedule during the year in a house that's on the east end of Westview Drive in North, South Carolina.
Wow. That's amazing.
I still take great delight in telling people. Somebody asked me, they said, how'd you end up in India? I said, would you believe that I was preaching in a conference that was hosted by a ministry in Looneyville, West Virginia? I kid you not. I preached there in Looneyville, West Virginia just a few months ago. Looneyville. Somebody asked me, well, where are you from? I say, North, South Carolina. They asked me, how did you end up in India? I say, Looneyville, West Virginia. I was preaching there, and of all things, a gentleman from India happened to show up in the hills of West Virginia, and he looked at me, and he asked me, would you ever think about coming to India? I was preaching in a church not long ago in Ashland, Kentucky. And a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long, long time, who pastored in West Virginia, he came over to the meeting, and I made reference to Looneyville, West Virginia. And he said out loud in the service, he said, when I spoke to Looneyville, West Virginia, he said, well, I'm from Stinking Creek. You know, somebody asked, who do you think you are? Well, I don't claim to be a great giant slayer, but I am one of those fellows that the Lord found in the woods.
All right. Amen.
I can bring them out of the woods if I want to. I think about something of instability and the shadows of obscurity. You say, nobody knows who I am. I got a pretty good idea God does.
Yes.
And He knows where you are.
Yes. Yes.
And if you'll be faithful in the shadows, God can bless you and use you in the shadows.
Yes.
I think about the stumbling of instability, and I think about the shadows of obscurity. But then I think about the surprise of familiarity. You know, sometimes we find ourselves amazed that God will use a certain individual because we have no idea who they are. But sometimes we are absolutely smitten and surprised that God uses somebody because we thought we did know who they were. The Bible says that the next giant slayer that stepped on the scene after Sibecai, the Bible says Elhanan, his family, was from a little town called Bethlehem. Has anybody heard of that town before?
Yeah.
That was David's hometown. Now I want you to understand that Bethlehem, even when Christ was born, was a very small village. It was just a little town. Rest assured, David was quite familiar with that family. We can could scarcely imagine that anybody was strangers there in Bethlehem. Bethlehem probably had about the population that some of the intersections do up here. Elhanan, whose family came from Bethlehem. David would have been familiar with that family. David was surprised as much as anybody when God used that young man to be the next giant. So sometimes we're surprised because we think we knew somebody quite well. Fred Schindler. I asked him one day, I said, how many times have you gone with me to India? And he said, 13 times. And I said, I beg your pardon? He said, I've been with you 13. I said, 13 times? He said, yeah. I said, you sure? He said, yes, 13 times. He said, I've been with you to India. I'm glad I've got friends in the ministry. I'm glad I've got close friends. I'm glad I got a dear friend in Wartown, Pennsylvania named Bruce Butler. And I always look forward to coming preaching for him. I'm glad they're my friends, but sometimes I get a little bit nervous because they get to know me a little bit better, and I maybe wish they did. You know, sometimes it's awkward preaching in front of your wife. You know why? Because you only think you know me. Oh, I know I've been preaching in this church for almost 25 years, but you think you know me. And I guess to some extent you do. But my wife knows me. And sometimes when I'm preaching, I'm reminded that she knows maybe that I haven't been the best example of what I'm admonishing others to be. Sometimes we get a little nervous when people they know, because I'm going to tell you, David thought he knew Elhanan. I would say to you, as has been said before, that behind every great man is not only a good woman, but a surprise mother-in-law. Because when we get to know people better than most everybody does, and sometimes we're the most surprised when we see what God does in their life. I have no doubt I've told you about my friend before. In college, I only had, during my whole tenure at college, I only had 2 roommates up to my first year, because the rest of the time I was a dormitory supervisor, and one perk was getting my own room. But I'll never forget my 2 roommates, my freshman year. This one roommate, a dear friend, to this day is a dear friend. But he had a difficult time with the ladies. It was very difficult, even though the phrases were well rehearsed. It seemed like so oftentimes when he would say something to get their attention, his poetic verbosity flowed from his lips as insults. I remember one day, and he liked this girl. He liked her. And he came to me and he said, wait a minute, he said, I don't understand. She's not talking to me. And I said, yeah, let me talk to you a few minutes. It seemed like he just could not. He tried his best. One day I walked into the room and I saw him kneeling in the middle of the floor with his hands raised toward the ceiling. He was praying out loud. Oh God, send me a woman! Send me a woman! I laughed at him and I said, if you ever get one, God's going to have to send her. I had been away on vacation. Came back in time for college to start again. I'm in the main administration building and I look down the hall and I see Leonard coming my direction. And beside him, there is a lovely young lady. And as they get closer, my friend, and by the way, I got to be a part of their wedding. But as they approached, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, is that? My friend says to me, I want to introduce you to my girlfriend, Teresa. And I looked at her and I said, no, my name's Louie. I wanted to go back to my dorm and close the door and fall on my knees and say, oh God, send me a woman! And by the way, he did! But sometimes, we look at somebody and we say, it ain't gonna happen. Unless God does the miraculous.
Yes.
Well, he can still do that, you know.
Yes.
How often we find ourselves so surprised because of who God does choose to use. I mean, you can't convince me otherwise. David knew that family quite well, and I am sure that he was as surprised as anybody else when Elhanan became the next giant slayer. But then there's one other giant slayer that we shall mention before we close tonight. The Bible says that there was one named Jonathan. I think about the stumbling of instability and the shadows of obscurity and the surprise of familiarity. But then I think finally about the shame of delinquency. The last giant slayer that stepped forward, his name was Jonathan. Now let me tell you a story tonight that for the moment you'll think has absolutely nothing to do with my message. The Bible tells us in 2 Samuel chapter number 13 of how that Amnon, the son of David, had impure desires for his half-sister, Tamar. The scriptures tell us that Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab. And Jonadab said, this is what you do. And he helped plot the defilement of Tamar. And soon thereafter, Absalom slew Amnon. But Amnon had a friend. His name was Jonadab. It seems as though that story has absolutely nothing to do with my message tonight, but it has everything to do with my message. Because you see, Jonadab's father's name was Shimei, who had another son, whose name was Jonathan. Jonathan, the giant slayer. In this family, there was one son who, yes, brought reproach upon the family, but there was another son that stepped forward and became the last of these giant slayers mentioned in Scripture. I would not be surprised if David, though that family was of some relation, if David would have said, I'll mark them off, they're delinquent, they're no good. After all, it was because of that family. His daughter Tamar had been defiled, that Amnon had fallen into such shame, that Amnon had died, and Absalom had become a murderer. It was because of that family. I think to myself, there must have been moments that David thought to himself, strike them all! What good can come of them? But the last giant slayer that stepped forward was Jonathan, the brother of Jonadab. If we're not careful, we'll find ourselves saying, what's becoming of this next generation? Find ourselves losing hope as we look at the youth that are going this direction and that direction. I look at the youth in this church and my hope is encouraged. But how oftentimes men have thrown up their hands and looked read and said, what's become of our youth? My friend David, no doubt, would have looked at that family and thought to himself, what's becoming of our youth? But the brother of that Jonadab was Jonathan, a giant slayer.
Amen.
You be careful who you mark off your list.
Yes, sir.
You be careful of whom you say, God can never use them. You know, the Lord has oftentimes been pleased to make of his greatest enemies preachers of the gospel.
Yes, sir.
Dare I remind you of the Apostle Paul?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think about that evangelist of many years gone by. I think it was George Whitfield, a great evangelist of years gone by, who, when he was robbed on one occasion, he prayed immediately after the robbery, and he said, Dear Lord, I pray that you would bring upon them that vengeance that only you can, and that you would make of one of those robbers a great preacher.
Yeah.
My friend, those are the kind of prayers that we need to be praying against those who have shown themselves to be the enemies of Christ.
Yes. Yes.
You be careful who you, by the way, I was one of those bus kids picked up in the neighborhood and brought. That's how I started. I used to be one of those kids running all over the church. Now God's let me run all over the world. And I was not yet 12 years of age, just a bus kid. I'm sure that some folks saw me and go forward when I took the preacher by the hand and told him, I think God wants me to be a preacher. I'm sure some folks thought to themselves, oh, bless his little heart. He can't understand what he's doing, but his mama must be proud. Well, let me tell you something. Not only was my mama proud, but I'm still pretty sure that's what I'm going to be, and I'm going to be a preacher.
Amen.
You be careful, my friend. Who's to say? That little child that comes into the church and uses the page of your favorite hymn as their coloring sheet for the morning.
Yes, sir.
That puts bubble gum beneath your pew, just where you were in the habit of placing your fingers.
Yes, sir.
Be careful, my friend. Who you're so quick to do. You can't convince me otherwise, my friend. I think David must have looked at that family sometime and thought to himself, they are of no account. Let me tell you something. The God of heaven decided, I'm going to use one of those boys for my glory. And look what God did. Yes, there was one named Jonadab who plotted the defilement of Tamar, but he had a brother who was a giant slayer.
Yes, sir.
Who's to say what God might do, and how surprised we are when the Lord lays his hand upon that next life and uses them to slay another giant. There was a man in India who was a radical Hindu. He hated the Christians. He hated the God of the Christians. He went to a meeting that was being held, crusade meeting that was held beneath the tent. He went to the meeting to cause destruction and whatever mischief he could. But when this radical Hindu got close to the tent, he and his other troublemakers, he heard this beautiful song being sung that captivated his heart. And that night, he became a child of the God he had so much hated. Because of that dear man of God who was lifting his voice and singing so beautifully. Just some months ago, in the state of Telangana, borders the state of Andhra Pradesh in India, I not only had the privilege of meeting both of those men, the man who was singing and the man who tried to cause mischief, who is now a great evangelist in India. I not only had the privilege of meeting those two men, I got to preach with those two men. The three of us together in this conference in the state of Telangana, we preached together a wonderful us who've served the Lord for some years now still find ourselves delightfully surprised when we see the next giant slayer step forward. He surprised everybody when a young shepherd boy named David stepped forward from the front and slew a Goliath in the valley. And I'll tell you, David himself was surprised when he saw the first giant slayer step forward. And maybe even more surprised when he saw the last giant slayer step forward. As David perhaps said to himself and said to another, who would have thought what God would have done? Blessed be his holy name. I'll tell you this, dear friend. As surprised as others are that God would use us, any of us, do we not oftentimes find ourselves surprised to see who God uses next? Would you stand together with me, please? Our heads are bowed, our eyes are closed. As you stand together with me, if you're able, heads are bowed and eyes are closed, my friend, as God speaks to your heart. I wonder how many God's people need to find a place to kneel, and perhaps it seems that we're in that moment when the last two great giant slayers have breathed their last breath and say, dear Lord, would you dare to lay your hand upon another even in this darkening hour? Even when it seems as though the last of the great giant slayers are breathing their last. Maybe you find yourself in a valley tonight. Maybe you would pray as David experienced, Lord, allow me to defeat that giant in the valley, but Lord, I pray that this grace wouldn't be confined to the valley, but it would reach beyond the valley. Not confined to my life alone, but it would touch the lives of others. Because David, the giant slayer, he raised up the giant slayers. Maybe tonight you'll find a place to pray and say, Lord, I don't know who you're going to use next out of this ministry. Some child that we pick up Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. Some child that walks in, somebody that comes in that nobody would expect would ever become much. But Lord, would you surprise us again in what you're pleased to do? Maybe you find a place to kneel tonight and say, dear Lord, would you use me? Would you use me? You say, preacher, I'm not a great example of stability. My friend, who's to say what God might do in your life if you just step forward in the battle? Who's to say? Who's to say? God He still finds great delight in, yes, delightfully surprising the rest of us by who He uses next. I rejoice in my memory of that day when He decided to use me. While heads are bowed and eyes are closed, maybe somebody will say, preacher, I'm not sure that I'm on my way to heaven. Would you please pray for me? I'm just not sure that heaven's my home. Pray for me. Is there anyone like that? You just slip up your hands and say, preacher, that's